You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah. So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host today. My name is Nick Walsh, and because it's the holiday weekend, I am once again here by myself, but that's all right. We're going to get through this, guys. We're going to get through the holidays, and we're going to get you through the Week 13 preview. Try and make sure you get all the information that you need. So a little bit of housekeeping here. So I'm just going to do this in one part. I'm going to try and run down all the pertinent information that I can, and I'll try and keep it as short as possible for you guys. I know this is coming out a bit later. It should be hitting your feed somewhere around Saturday afternoon / Sunday morning. Again, I know it's a little last minute. I do apologize there, but it's a holiday weekend. And we all have our own lives going on. While this is something that we love to do, it is not a full-time job for any of us. So until we get to that point where this is a full-time job for us, then you'll have to forgive us on that one. I do apologize. But hey, what can you do? We are going to try to get you through everything we can here. And hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I should have led with that as well. In terms of good food, family time, and fantasy performance. I know in terms of the daily slates, I did a couple things right. I think the things I did wrong were that I was 100% Kamara. Didn't need to do that. Seemed like the right call at the time. I did because I was 100% Kamara and I was heavy on a couple other guys. I was completely off Michael Thomas. That didn't kill me, but wasn't ideal towards the end of that game. I was in the money in tournaments, at least like 2 or 3x in tournaments all day, and then fell out of the money in all of my lineups in like the last half of the fourth quarter. So that was pretty tight. I'm trying to think what else I did wrong. I went all the way down to Javon Wims as the cheap Bears wide receiver instead of going only down to Anthony Miller. And I was on John Brown over Cole Beasley, as I generally tend to be. But other than that, pretty solid stuff. I was heavy on Zeke. I was heavy on Singletary. I played 100% Amari, which didn't really matter, but I thought that was the right play, with him coming off bad performances and in an unideal matchup. I thought that was the right play. But hey, you can't win them all. So we're going to try and get back out there this Sunday and really give it a shot. All right, guys, I have here for you 13 games that I'm going to run down. There are no buys this week. We are past the buys. If you are in, for a lot of you, this is the last week before playoffs. Please reach out to us with questions that you have after going through this. And again, for posterity's purposes, I am recording this on Saturday morning. So, the information that I have is the information available at that time. All right, let's get into it. Green Bay Packers at New York Giants. Packers are a 6-point favorite here. The over-under is 45. I think the biggest headline should be that Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams should really smash in this matchup. The Giants' run D has been significantly better than the Giants' pass defense. Not that the Giants' run D has been great, but they did trade for Leonard Williams from the New York Jets a couple weeks ago. It has improved since then. So looking at Davante Adams and the rest of this Packers game, over the past 3 weeks, that's since Adams came back from injury, the Packers' target share, Davante Adams, 33%, Jamal Williams, 15%, Allen Lazard, 12%, Jimmy Graham, 9%. There's a couple other wide receivers sprinkled in there. And then Aaron Jones all the way down at 4%. So since this return of Adams, Aaron Jones, who had led the team in targets in a couple of games this year, has really been non-existent in the pass game, and that sort of led to his very, very low floor. Now, in this matchup, I obviously think Adams is the clear number one matchup. I think he's a guy who you should be actively trying to get into any daily lineups that you are running out there. But I think Jamal Williams might be the better of the running back plays here. It's a little difficult to tell. And, this usage could really change after this past week. The coaching staff said they would like to get Aaron Jones more involved, and they need to get Aaron Jones more involved than they did this past week. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. I think I'm still playing both of them. That's about it for the Packers offense. On the Giants side of the ball, this is a very good matchup for Saquon Barkley, despite him not really performing recently. I think you can chalk up his performance to, that high ankle sprain still lingering. When he came back after 2 weeks, we were like, wow, Saquon isn't human for coming back after 2 weeks from a high ankle sprain. And it turns out he probably should have just waited a couple more weeks because the guy is clearly not healthy right now. He doesn't have the explosiveness that he's had. And I think consequently, he's not being used in the pass game as much. Theoretically, this is a great matchup for him. But look, Saquon's not what he was last year. So just keep that in mind. In the pass game, Golden Tate out with a concussion. Evan Ingram also going to miss this game. Rhett Ellison also going to miss this game. So to me, Sterling Shepard is the guy who's going to benefit the most in this wide receiver core. He saw 9 targets in his first game back this past week, and he should kick into the slot, which has been, a better matchup for Green Bay than the outside. With Tate on the bench. So Shepard, to me, good play. Darius Slayton, I think I'm also running out there. He's held a large percentage of the air yards and targets for the Green Bay Packers over these past couple of weeks. With the rest of these guys not available, I think he makes a pretty intriguing play here. Cody Latimer should be the third wide receiver on the field. I don't think you need to go that deep. Let's talk about the tight end, where Caden Smith last week saw 6 targets on 98% of the snaps in his first game as a starter. The Green Bay Packers have given up the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends in the NFL. Caden Smith, to me, roll him out there if you need to. All right, picking this one, I'm going to pick it against the spread, and I'm going to take the Giants to cover this spread. I didn't mention it. I think Daniel Jones could be a viable start here, but I don't think you really need to go there. All right, Washington at Carolina. Carolina is a 10-point favorite. The over-under here is 39.5. So very, very low implied team total here for Washington. When Vegas thinks you're going to be getting less than 15 points, we generally don't want a single piece of that offense. I don't really think that's an exception here. Carolina run defense is bad, and then Dontari Poe is now out. So the run efficiency should be pretty solid for Washington. But here's the thing. We've got Darius Geis back now. Him and Adrian Peterson split snaps last game. Geis got 24 while Peterson got 20. This week, Chris Thompson is expected to return, or is it at least expected that he may return. I think if he goes, you really can't get away with playing any of these guys. I think if he does not go, you can get away with a Darius Geis play in an RB2 or flex spot, just because he's going to have that pass game upside a little bit more than he would have previously. And again, we expect the run defense to not be great here for Carolina. If Washington does have a chance at winning this game, that's how they're going to do it. It's going to be by controlling the ball and really just running down the throat of this defense. In terms of the pass game, Terry McLaurin has had 25% of the targets and 40% of the air yards in this offense in Dwayne Haskins' 3 starts. Those are good numbers. I don't think he's a guy I want to play, particularly because this Carolina secondary is, healthier than it has been in recent weeks with Bradbury, Jackson, and Cockrell, I believe, all expected to play. Don't quote me on Cockrell there. I'm not going after McLaurin. I'm not going after Dwayne Haskins targets. Not my game. Kelvin Harmon has also had a decent amount of target and air yard share, 18% and 28% respectively, since Paul Richardson has gotten hurt. Like I said, not going after Dwayne Haskins pass game targets against Carolina. On the Carolina side of the ball, Christian McCaffrey is going to fucking destroy, would be, I think, the easiest way to describe it. Washington's run defense is not good. They don't have any way to really stop him in the pass game. McCaffrey, locked and loaded. You didn't need me to tell you that. DJ Moore over the past 4 games, 45 targets, 30 catches, 442 yards, 2 touchdowns. That is a hell of a performance. DJ Moore has been absolutely stellar lately in this matchup. I don't think they're going to have to sling the ball all over the field here. So maybe some of the volume might be a bit stunted, but DJ Moore at this point is not a guy that you are sitting, period. Greg Olsen over that same time period, 28 targets, 21 catches, 289 yards, 0 touchdowns. That's a great line for a tight end in terms of fantasy performances. In this week matchup, he's another guy that I am rolling out there. And then Curtis Samuel has clearly been the fourth option over that time frame. Again, the past 4 games, only a 15% target share. And while he is getting 27% of the air yards, Kyle Allen isn't really hitting him deep. He has not been accurate on deep balls really at all this year. So Samuel's sort of being used in a deep ball role with a quarterback who can't get the ball to him, and he's only getting 15% target share. Not worth it to me in what should be a low volume matchup. Is it possible he gets behind the defense and gets loose? Yeah, 100%. But I think that's less likely of the 2 options. All right, I'm going to take Carolina to cover here. I expect this to be a blowout. And we'll move right on to San Francisco at Baltimore. This game is going to be awesome for actual football purposes. There are 2 games like this week. Awesome for actual football. I don't really think they mean that much for fantasy, or they're that useful for fantasy. So Baltimore here is a 5.5 point favorite with an over-under of 46. This is a bad matchup for Jimmy Garoppolo since they've gotten these 3 cornerbacks going. Of course, I'm talking about Marlon Humphrey in the slot, Jimmy Smith, and then Marcus Peters on the outside. Baltimore's pass defense has just been stellar. So bad matchup for Garoppolo. I'm not looking to play him. In terms of his pass catchers, Emmanuel Sanders has been dealing with a rib injury. He's going to play this week, but I'm skeptical of him with that rib injury. It seems like it's been bothering him. He's been used sort of as a decoy the past couple of weeks. And then Deebo Samuel only had 2 targets this past week and is in a bad matchup. So for me, the only guy in this pass offense that I am playing is George Kittle. Baltimore's been good against the tight end, but George Kittle is really good, and you should not bench him if he is playing. That's pretty much the extent of that. In the run game, Tevin Coleman has been not really that great over the past 4 weeks, really ever since that 4 touchdown game. He is, though, averaging 11 carries and 4 targets per game over the last 4 games. To me, that's a usable running back in an efficient offense. I know we don't love this matchup, but I think I'm still rolling Coleman out there unless I really have better options. And if you've been playing him, you probably don't at this point. Matt Breida is questionable, so he may or may not go here. I don't think that affects Coleman as much as it does Raheem Mostert, who has been pretty efficient lately. It remains to be seen whether he keeps a role. When Breida came back, when Breida and Coleman have both been healthy, it's really been a 2-headed backfield for the most part, with Mostert only sort of getting in there in garbage time. I'm interested to see if Raheem Mostert is going to keep at least somewhat of a role, turn this into a 3-headed backfield with Breida back healthy and with, the quality of Mostert's play recently. Neither of them are really on the playable radar for me unless Breida does not go, in which case you could throw Mostert in there as a desperation flex, just because of the target upside might be a bit greater. But yeah, really not trying to do any of that. On the Baltimore side of the ball, Lamar, duh. I know it's a bad matchup. I know San Francisco's defense is good. You're not sitting Lamar Jackson. Marquise Brown this past week, up to 62% snaps and 7 targets. That's both the best for both of him since his return from injury. Marquise Brown's a tough guy, particularly on the teams that I have him with, where I have a lot of mid-range wide receivers that – I'm trying to play based on matchup. I'm trying to play based on target volume, that sort of thing. Marquise Brown is a guy who it seems like if you play him every week, you're going to get some big weeks and some down weeks. But if you play him every week, it's going to even out over the long run and probably be okay. I think where you run into issues is trying to predict his matchups, because I didn't think his matchup this past week was particularly good. And of course, he goes for 2 touchdowns. So up to you on Marquise Brown based on your lineup completely. I have not made a decision on him. I think you can roll him, but expect a low floor and a very high ceiling. That's just the kind of player that he is. San Francisco has been good against the tight end this year. So despite the fact that Mark Andrews, has had a 21% target share over the past 4 weeks, he's tough to trust because this is a low volume offense, low pass volume offense, where 21% of the pie is not as big as most other pies or most other pieces of pies. That being said, Nick Boyle, who's had, I think, a 13% target share over the past couple of weeks, he's questionable. So if he doesn't go, maybe that increases the target floor for Andrews a little bit, but I'm not really sure exactly what that does to the offense, and I don't want to make too much conjecture there. Either way, it's a bad matchup. He's tough to trust. You probably don't have better options. If you're tempted by Willie Snead's 2 touchdowns last week, he has a 12% target share over the past 4 weeks. Please do not play Willie Snead. I will be taking San Francisco to cover. I expect this one to be very close. Tennessee at Indianapolis. Indy is a 1.5-point favorite with an over-under of 43.5 points. I think despite being Tennessee being strong against the run, this is really mostly a spot for the running backs. So Derrick Henry, obviously a great play. He's really come into his own these past couple of weeks. We know he can break big plays at any time. Great play this week. Jonathan Williams on the Indianapolis side of the ball, I also think is a very good play. He was clearly the number one guy. We talked about it on the recap a couple of days ago. He was clearly the number one guy against the Texans, with Marlon Mack down. So while this isn't as good of a matchup as the Texans were, I still think he's a good start because he saw some usage in the pass game as well. I believe he had 5 targets in that game. So that gives him a higher floor than we would have initially thought. Now, with Jordan Wilkins being healthier and that sort of thing, is it possible his usage decreases? Yeah, but we've seen nothing to really indicate that. And Jonathan Williams hasn't done anything that would make me want to decrease his usage if I'm the Colts. In the pass game on either side, Ryan Tannehill has made it work for fantasy despite a low passing volume the past couple of weeks. I'm not sure that's going to continue. He's getting around 40 yards per week rushing. I think that can continue, but he also has 3 rushing touchdowns over the past 3 weeks. And I think that part is less likely to keep going moving forward. A.J. Brown is the wide receiver to play if you are going to play one for the Titans. He led the team in targets this past week, and he's good. We know he has big playability. But like I said, I think the pie is small here. I think this is a pace-down game for the Titans. I think it's difficult to really project anyone for a huge amount of volume, and that makes me cautious. So yeah, not really on A.J. Brown if I don't need to be. Corey Davis is being used as a deep threat. I don't think you need to go there. On the Indianapolis side of the ball, T.Y. Hilton is expected to play, but he was used as a decoy this past week. I don't really trust him until he's actively said he doesn't feel good. He's actively said he's unsure of his status going into this week. So I don't really trust him in this matchup. I do trust Jack Doyle with Eric Ebron going down. I think that narrows the target share a little bit. And then you could swing Zach Pascal, but I don't think it's really necessary. The target volume and the production just have not been there for him really these past couple weeks, really ever since Eric Ebron started getting featured more. I know I just said Ebron's out, so maybe it's worth it. But look, I don't think this is a great matchup. I really just don't see a ton of fantasy production coming out of this game. Nice sip of coffee there. My coffee's cooling down a little bit. It's fucking cold in San Francisco, dude. It's like mid 40s, which for SF is pretty cold. And I try not to turn on the heat in my apartment because if my electricity bill goes electricity and gas goes over like a certain amount, it's not included in my rent anymore and I have to start paying for it. So it's pretty cold in my apartment. I wish my coffee was warmer than it is. Anyway, I'm going to take Tennessee here. Derrick Henry's been a beast. I think he carries them to another win. All right, Philadelphia at Miami. Philly's a 10-point favorite. The over-under here is 45. Now, theoretically, this is a great matchup for Carson Wentz, who has been limited with a bruised thumb and has looked pretty terrible. He's hard to trust here, but I think you do it, particularly with Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar, both expected back. Jeffrey, I think, is a fine wide receiver to play. He was getting heavy target volume, even if it was close to the line of scrimmage targets, and he's not really a guy who gets a ton of yak to begin with. And then Aguilar, to me, is a guy that I am very tempted to play in DFS tournaments this week. It's a great matchup. They give up a lot of deep balls. Aguilar has provided, that deep threat ability, even if he hasn't converted on it most of the time this year. So definitely stay away in season long. I don't think it's worth it. In DFS tournaments, against my better judgment, I am extremely tempted to get him out there in a couple lineups. Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert have both been productive and have both been playing close to 100% of snaps these past couple of weeks. We'll see if that goes down with Jeffrey and Aguilar back. But for Goddard, obviously. But at this point, you're rolling both of them. They're both solid starts. And then in the running game, Jordan Howard is out for this week. So Miles Sanders, the past 2 weeks, has played about 85% of the snaps. It's possible if this is a blowout that they go to Boston Scott or Jay Ajayi a little bit more. But I think in this matchup, you really can't sit Sanders. He's gotten 9 targets over the past 2 weeks as well. So his pass game usage is there. He's on the field a lot. He's getting double-digit carries. I really think the only thing that could keep him from getting there is the blowout potential. I'm willing to take that risk. Philly's defense is very good and should be played in every league against the Dolphins. I don't think you need me to tell you that. All right, on the Dolphins side of the ball, there's 2 plays. It's Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki. Devontae Parker is 3rd in targets and 6th in receiving yards in the NFL since Preston Williams got hurt. It's not an ideal matchup. I know Philly, we picked on them a lot early in the season. They're good now. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks. Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby are good enough cornerbacks that with Philly's front 7 and the pressure that they get on the quarterback, that they are passable. The defense is good. The only other Mike Gesicki is also a guy who should be played. He's getting over 6 targets a week in the past couple of weeks. He caught his first touchdown last week at the tight end position. I think he's a guy you should be rolling out there. I think the debate between him and Goddard is a good one to have. I think I'd go Gesicki over Goddard in this game. So I would be playing 3 tight ends in this game, which is very, very rare. But in that order, it would be Ertz, Gesicki, and Goddard. And I think that's just because of the uncertainty with Jeffrey and Aguilar coming back and the amount of targets that should go their way. Allen Hurns has been used a lot. And Jakeem Grant is hurt. Albert Wilson is, I think, still going to play, but does have an injury. So Allen Hurns to me is a dart throw. I'm not actively trying to do it. I don't think he has the upside in DFS to get me somewhere in a tournament. So I'm not trying to really do it there either. But, there's some leagues where you might be very, very desperate at receiver. I think there are worse plays out there. Like Demaryius Thomas is a guy who I might have to play this week, and I'd rather play Allen Hurns than him. All right, last game before we take a quick break here. We're going to go Oakland at Kansas City. Kansas City, I didn't pick the last one. I'm taking Philly even with that outlandish spread. Actually, you know what? I might take Miami at home there with that large of a spread. Fitzpatrick is good at garbage time. Yeah, I'll take Miami. All right, Oakland at Kansas City. Kansas City is a 10.5-point favorite. The over-under here is 51. On the Kansas City side of the ball, the big news is that Damian Williams is out. So that means McCoy should be, plugged into pretty much all lineups. He's been solid, going over 80 yards in every game that Damian Williams has missed. So LaShawn McCoy, good play. Darrell Williams, he's chuck him in there if you're very desperate. He should get some work there, particularly in the passing game behind McCoy. In the rest of the passing game, despite this great matchup, I think this is sort of like a keep it simple, stupid moment for me, where, you're obviously playing Mahomes, but the Raiders pass defense, they're going to get beat for sure. It's going to be Hill. It's going to be Kelsey. I don't think you need to go farther than that, despite a theoretically good matchup for Sammy Watkins and even Demarcus Robinson, just because I don't think the Chiefs are going to need to go farther than that. The Raiders can't shut down Hill and Kelsey, so why would they need to go to Watkins and Robinson? Could I be wrong there? Yes, because they're not going to be able to shut down Watkins and Robinson either. But my thinking is that Mahomes' reads early are going to be for Hill. They're going to be for Kelsey. Those two will just go off. Hopefully that's the way it goes, because if Sammy Watkins goes off, I'm going to be really upset with myself because I have already convinced myself not to play him as a cheap-priced option on daily sites. On the Raiders side of the ball, this is a good matchup in terms of yard per carry and efficiency for Josh Jacobs at running back, but game script could be an issue here with the Chiefs as a 10-point favorite. If they get out to an early lead, we could see Jacobs leave the field for more Jalen Richard, who's gotten a lot of usage in the past several weeks, a pretty significant target share. I'm interested to see if they kind of split Richard out a little bit more with Hunter Renfrow hurt and expected to miss this game. We could see Richard on the field with Jacobs maybe a little bit more. I think that's what I would hope for. But look, Jacobs is getting between 50 and 60% of the snaps each week, and they're expected to be down by a lot in this game. You're not benching him, but the floor is low. And I definitely don't think he's, a guy I'm actively looking to play in daily or anything like that. I'll have to kind of look at some other things there because now I'm getting tempted in tournaments because I would assume his ownership would be low, but we'll see. As I mentioned, Hunter Renfrow is expected to miss this game. I think you can expect a target bump there for Darren Waller, which those guys sort of compete for inside targets. Waller has had 18 targets over the past 3 weeks as well. And I think we can just sort of expect that to be a stellar game this week for Waller where they're going to have to throw the ball. The Chiefs are very good against the wide receiver, but they're not really anything special against the tight end. So I think Waller is a great play. He's definitely a guy to roll out there. Zay Jones, I guess, is going to see a bump up in playing time due to Renfrow missing this game, but I think it's hard to play him. Tyrell Williams has gotten exactly 5 targets a game since week 3. There's upside there if he can hit, but I'll let you go chase that. I will not be chasing it this week. I'm going to take Kansas City in this one, even with that spread. That sucked to say. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. I will be back with the last, I believe it's going to be 7 games. But, hey, we'll get them through there. We'll get you the information. I'll be back in just a minute.
Have you thought about trying sports betting but aren't sure how it'll go? Our friends at FanDuel are giving away a $50 sign-up bonus at letstalkfantasyfootball.com/FanDuel-sportsbook.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to jump right into part 2 here. Part 2 as in like post-break, not like new podcast. This is all going to be the same thing, hopefully. I don't think Shrek's going to break it up. Anyway, Tampa Bay at Jacksonville. Tampa Bay is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under here is 47.5. On the Tampa Bay side of the ball, it's interesting because the Jags defense has been bad at everything except for getting pressure on the passer. I'm not going to sit Winston because of that. I still think he's in a great spot here, but it kind of makes the Jags defense interesting as a play. I'm going to look into it a little bit more, but we know Jameis struggles under pressure and we know he's mistake prone. So if the Jags can get after him a little bit, they might be able to force some turnovers. That's what we want in our defenses. Theoretically, this is a great spot for Ronald Jones, who is the lead back against a defense that just got gashed for over 200 yards by the Texans, Titans, and Colts. His floor is still low. He's only gotten 50% of snaps or more twice this season, and he has not eclipsed 55% at any point. Peyton Barber still gets some work, and then Dare Ogunbowale is the guy who's sort of in there on passing downs a lot of the time. That being said, it is a great spot for Ronald Jones. He's a guy that I am personally playing in leagues where I have him. So I think it makes a ton of sense there. The pass game here is easy. It's Evans. It's Godwin. It seems like they got the bullshit of throwing Cameron Brate 14 targets and Ronald Jones 8 targets out of their system. Hopefully that continues because I just want to play these two guys and have them smash for me. On the Jacksonville side of the ball, Foles is an elite play here despite his poor performances since coming back. I'm slightly worried about pressure getting to him because he's a bit of a lead foot, but I don't think it's really that big of an issue here. Tampa Bay has been horrendous against the pass all year. Would expect that to continue. And because of that, I think you can play DJ Chark for sure. And then Conley and Westbrook, I think, are all viable. I would guess only 2 of those 3 hit. And my guess there would be Chark and Conley. But still, Westbrook is certainly in play as well. And then Leonard Fournette, despite this being a bad matchup, he's not a guy you're sitting. The touch floor is way too high. He's used significantly in the past game. I believe he is second in target share on this team over the past couple of weeks behind only DJ Shark. So, yeah, Fournette, great play despite the bad matchup. I'm going to take Jacksonville here. All right. Jets at Bengals, another great spot in a string of great spots for Sam Darnold, who has really been killing it lately. He's been a top 10 quarterback the past 3 weeks. Keep rolling him out there if you have been rolling him out there, as I have. Join me in basking in the Darnold for at least we got 2 more weeks of it, and then you got to find something else. So after this week, I would be actively looking for another quarterback, not to play next week because the Jets play the Dolphins. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I would be actively trying to pick up my quarterback for weeks 15 and 16 because they're very important, either this week or right after this week. Just look at those matchups, that sort of thing, because Darnold is not going to really be it, I don't think, in those 2 weeks. Le'Veon Bell, this should be a great spot for him. He was robbed last week. Darnold threw 2 touchdowns from the 1-yard line and then ran in another from the 4 on a read option where he kept the ball. So, could have easily been a 3-touchdown game for Le'Veon Bell last week. I expect him to produce very similarly to what he did last week. And then the touchdown equity should be there as well. So Le'Veon Bell, great play. I haven't really looked at what his ownership projections are for daily, or really what his price is. But I would expect that I'll be using a lot of him this week. Jamison Crowder wasn't really involved last week as he really wasn't needed. They just came out, punched the Raiders in the mouth, and the targets were spread around a lot. I believe Robbie Anderson led the team with 5 of them. So that kind of shows you where everything went. I would expect Crowder to be back in the game plan this week. Leading into last week, everything looked towards him being a great play. I don't think this 1 week of information should throw out the previous 3 to 4 weeks where Crowder was really heavily involved. That being said, I think it is a positive indication for Robbie Anderson, who had a pretty solid week last week. He was found down the field once, and we know that the Bengals give up a lot of big plays. And also, I kind of buried the lead here. Andy Dalton's back for the Bengals. He should help keep this one closer and higher scoring than you would expect in a Ryan Finley start. Other than that, you've got Ryan Griffin, who's been heavily targeted in the red zone. And at a thin tight end position is a pretty solid start. I think that's about it for the Jets. Demaryius Thomas, I'm staying away from unless I absolutely need to. On the Bengals side of the ball, Andy Dalton, not a terrible play. I don't think you need to go there. It's really not the correct move here. In terms of his receivers, you've got Tyler Boyd, who I think is in a great spot here. In weeks 1 through 8 with Dalton, he only had below 55 receiving yards twice. Those were against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, both teams that have covered the slot wide receiver well this year, and are division rivals, so they're very familiar with Tyler Boyd. And in those 8 weeks, he also averaged over 10 targets a game. I like it. It's a great matchup for him. I need to do a little bit more research into Auden Tate, but I also think you could maybe get away with him in the desperate spot. Joe Mixon is the other option that we need to talk about here. In the pass game, he's averaging less than 3 targets per game this season. And while he's seen increased rushing usage over the past 3 weeks, those were all with Ryan Finley. So I think with Dalton back, they're going to open up the offense a little bit more. This is a bad matchup for Mixon. The Jets have been a bit of a funnel defense, significantly better against the run than they have been against the pass. And with Mixon's abbreviated pass game usage, it's really not something that I'm trying to go after. If you've been starting him and you need to start him, then you need to start him. But yeah, look, it's not a good play here, and I don't expect it to work out unless he gets in the end zone. I will take the Jets. They're hot right now. I think they cover that 3-point spread. Moving on to the Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. Rams here are 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 47.5. On the Rams side, it's a little interesting here. They've looked really, really bad recently. There's no way to sugarcoat it. But this is a good matchup. And if Goff's going to produce, this is the week he's going to do it. So I don't mind Goff as a streamer. I really don't. Arizona hasn't been spectacular at getting pressure on the quarterback. That's where Goff has struggled. And I think with the offense, or at least these wide receivers healthy, it's not a bad move. Robert Woods had a 25% target share in his return last week. That was second on the team, only to Cooper Kupp. I like him. I like Kupp this week. I don't think they're really going to be able to defend what the Rams want to do. So I like those two. I'm off Cooks. I mean, look, the guy just hasn't been involved. It's difficult to really play him. And even last week, Josh Reynolds was still involved in the offense. They sort of used Cooks, Woods, and Reynolds as a three-receiver rotation behind Kupp. Woods and Cooks were seriously ahead of Reynolds, but he still ran 20 routes this past week. So that's not an insignificant amount. And Cooks just hasn't had the target share the entire year. At the tight end position, Gerald Everett is not going to play, so we'll get a heavy dose of Tyler Higbee, and it's the Arizona defense. Like, you can absolutely play Tyler Higbee this week. Arizona's been a target against the tight end this whole year. I don't expect that to change right now. And then in the run game, Todd Gurley, over a 70% snap share since the Rams bye. This is clearly a good spot for him. Start Gurley with confidence this week, I think. Arizona, there's not a lot here for me to like. Kyler Murray, it seems like it would be a very good matchup for him here, or at least a situation where you can comfortably start him. And then he was put on the injury report on Friday for the first time all week, questionable with a hamstring injury. That seems to imply that he got hurt his hamstring in practice on Friday. That's scary, particularly for a guy that we rely on his legs so much for production. I want more information here, but if I can get off of Kyler, I'm getting off of Kyler. The only wide receiver you can really trust, and really the only pass catcher you can trust here in this offense, has been Christian Kirk. He's at a 24% target share and a 37% market share of air yards since week 10, which was his first week where he was really fully integrated back into the offense and used as an outside wide receiver. I just mentioned that I don't like Kyler here. I think Kirk, if you've been using him, he's not a bad start. I think he's a guy that you can roll out there. They're going to need to throw it somewhere, even if Kyler is not on his game as much as he usually is. And Kirk has clearly been their preferred target. It is a low floor, though. And then the running back situation that's really been dominated by Kenyon Drake in recent weeks. They're coming off their bye, so David Johnson should be healthier than he was before that, when he was really seemed like just a decoy and really seemed immobile out there. And then Chase Edmonds is coming back from injury as well. So now we've got a three-headed running back attack where two guys who have played well at different points in the season are coming back healthier than they were. Kenyon Drake, while he seemed to have really earned a spot as the primary running back, he was brought onto this team midway through the season, and you have these two other guys. I would be surprised if he's got 60% or more of the snap share in this game. That would definitely be a shock to me. So, if you're going to play one of these guys, it's Drake. I don't recommend playing any of them if you can avoid it, but you might not be able to. It's Drake over the other two, that's for sure. All right. I think that does it for this game. I am going to take the Rams here to cover. Definite get right spot for them. Moving on to the Chargers at the Denver Broncos. The Chargers here are a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 38.5. On the Chargers side of the ball, if you're still starting Phillip Rivers, fucking stop. There are a multitude of guys you can pick up off the waiver wire who have been performing better than him. There's no reason to continue with it right now. The two running backs, really, I think, are the guys who have been the most consistent starts here. Melvin Gordon has come into his own, and I expect that to continue this week. He's a guy you should be playing. And then Austin Eckler, he's tough because his targets have been inconsistent and he's not getting a ton of ground usage. Over the past 5 weeks, here's Austin Eckler's targets: 8, 3, 4, 2, 12. What the fuck are we supposed to do with that? So, look, if you have him in PPR, he's not a bad start. I think you should be looking elsewhere if you can. We just mentioned Kenyon Drake. I would be playing Eckler over Kenyon Drake, I think. The rest of the passing game targets are obviously Keenan Allen, who's seen a lot of targets but has been inconsistent in production. I think you keep rolling him out here despite the Chris Harris matchup. Hunter Henry, who, it's tight end. You're not sitting Hunter Henry. He gets a lot of volume. And then Mike Williams is just very difficult to trust. He's actually sort of produced on low target volume recently, but he hasn't seen more than 6 targets in the past 4 weeks. He also hasn't seen the end zone this season after really being an end zone monster last year. So I can't in good conscience tell you to start Mike Williams this week. Denver side of the ball. I keep saying side of the ball. I'll try and stop doing that. Denver's offense. Brandon Allen and Drew Lock, we do not know which of them is going to start. Drew Lock, it seems like, is going to at least be active for this game. He is, of course, their rookie second-round quarterback. I don't think it matters too much, really, here in terms of what we're doing, because there's only a couple plays that you're going after. Phillip Lindsay is now clearly ahead of Royce Freeman. He should be started. He's a talented guy, seeing the majority of the running back work. I know it's for Denver, but he should be started here. The Chargers defense is nothing to be afraid of. The only 2 considerations in the pass game are Courtland Sutton and Noah Fant. I think neither of them have really been consistent in production, but Sutton's targets have been pretty consistently around 8 to 10 over the past couple weeks, while Fant's have really fluctuated between like 4 and 10. So Sutton is clearly the more consistent option here, but he's also at a better position. So, at tight end, we've talked about how bad it is. Noah Fant isn't the worst start that you can make. I think Courtland Sutton should have a higher expectation for points here. I am going to take the Chargers and move on. We've got 3 games left. I'll try and get through them as quickly as possible here. To Cleveland at Pittsburgh, another low total game here. Cleveland, a 2-point favorite with an over-under of 39. I don't think you need to play Baker against Pittsburgh, but it's really hard to sit any of their other consistent plays in this matchup. And I'll start with Kareem Hunt, who has 20 targets over 3 games since his return and has been greater than 50% of the snaps in every single game. So Kareem Hunt, I think it's pretty hard to fade him. I think he's a pretty solid start in this matchup. But then also Nick Chubb has had 22, 27, and 24 touches in those 3 weeks since Hunt has been back. So I like him as well. And in those same 3 weeks, Landry and Odell each have 30 targets. Landry's been doing more with them. He's been balling the hell out. But both of these guys should be played in this matchup. And part of me is having a weird, where I'm saying you shouldn't really start Baker, but if I like these other 4 guys, I think consequently I like Baker as well. So, I think he's clearly a better start than anyone in the last game that we talked about with Rivers and the fucking Denver situation. And then, with Kyler questionable, unless we get news that hamstring isn't an issue, I think I might play Baker over Kyler this week as well. So, yeah, there's that. I guess I don't dislike Baker too much. On the Pittsburgh side of the ball, there's literally nothing here. Devlin Hodges is going to start. You're not going to play him. Benny Snell is a desperation flex, but he has no pass game upside. So even if he gets fucking 16 carries, 16 carries for 38 yards and no touchdowns is within the realm of possibilities here. He's not someone that I'm really actively trying to play. And then in the pass game, Juju's not going to play. I guess I would play James Washington if I'm going to play either receiver between him and Deontay Johnson. And then Vance McDonald is just not worth it. I know I said last week, oh, he's got 7 targets in each of the past 3 weeks. It's I'm just not going to play one. I think he had 3 this past week. And then I'm not going to play Devlin Hodges tight end. I'm not going to do it. I'm taking Cleveland here. New England at Houston. This is the other game. I mentioned before San Francisco at Baltimore that there were 2 games that are very, very interesting for regular football and really don't do much for me in terms of fantasy. this is the other one. New England's a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 45.5. On the New England side of the ball, God damn it, I said it again. I need like you guys to like chime in with like phrases I can just fucking say instead of saying that. Whatever. New England. That's a great introduction. New England, just say that. I'm not really trusting Tom Brady here. You know, I don't think it's a bad play because Houston's pass defense hasn't been good, and they are in the dome in Houston. So that part's all good. I don't think you need to play him. But I guess I see him in sort of the Baker Mayfield range here. Like it's a pretty decent matchup because Houston's not getting pressure on the quarterback. They don't have a good back end of their defense. It's a good matchup. And while I don't like any of the skill position players except for really one here in this situation, yeah, you know what? On second thought, I think you can go with Brady. The running backs, I think it's hard. I think it's very difficult because Sony Michel would theoretically be a guy that we like here, but it's three-headed, and Burkhead just takes away all of the upside from all of this. I think out of these three, James White in PPR is the best play, but I don't want to play any of them. That's been sort of a function. Like we've been able to play New England running backs in three-headed attacks when their offense has been prolific in past years. Their offense isn't prolific right now. And while this is definitely a get-right spot, it's really not a situation I'm actively looking to attack. In terms of the rest of the pass catchers, Julian Edelman's the only guy I'm comfortable with on the offense because we know he's going to get, somewhere from 8 to 12 targets would be my guess. Other than that, you've got Dorsett likely to come back from his concussion, and you've got Sanu likely to play but not necessarily be 100%. So I don't know who's going to play because Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry both looked pretty decent this past week. Particularly Myers, I thought, looked pretty solid. And I believe he got 9 targets. So you benching him, you throwing him right on the bench. Does he play in a rotation with Sanu? Does N'Keal Harry play in there a little bit more because he was their first-round pick? I don't know. I don't know how this receiver rotation works behind Edelman. I would think Dorsett would be my clear number 2 play in this situation. But yeah, Edelman's the only guy I'm really looking to attack out there. The Houston side of the ball is tough as well because New England's defense is very, very good, particularly against the pass. Now, if we had like a do-it-all running back, I would say yes, absolutely. But we've got Hyde, who doesn't get targets in the pass game. I don't know if I want to chase his touchdowns right now. Unless I really need to. And then Duke Johnson just really is not getting the work to make himself relevant. He's only getting enough work to downgrade Hyde. The wide receivers, we saw Will Fuller get 11 targets in his first game back. Playing him against New England seems like a situation where we're chasing points. We know how boom and bust he can be. I would expect this week to be a bust, but also he's Will Fuller. All he needs to do is get behind the defense and it can work. So I don't know, man. It's tough. Like, it's really tough there. And then DeAndre Hopkins, in this game, the first game back that Fuller had, he got 8 targets. He's expected to be shadowed by Stephon Gilmore. That's a bad matchup. You're not going to sit DeAndre Hopkins. You can't do it. He's a guy who's shown to be matchup proof in the past. You just can't sit him. So, I'm not going to be playing him in daily. I'll tell you that much, but actually, it's a night game, so that doesn't even really apply to the main slate. Whatever. You guys get the point here. It's really tough to project, I think, this Houston offense. Deshaun Watson and his viability is very questionable to me, too. Like, I talked about, I think Tom Brady's the better play in this game. That might be incorrect. Deshaun Watson can prove you wrong, but I think Brady's the better play of the 2 quarterbacks in this game. I'm going to take New England here. Minnesota at Seattle. This is the Monday night game. This is the last game I got for you guys. Seattle's a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 50. So we're trying to attack this game with everything we got. On the Minnesota side of the ball, I said it again, Adam Thielen is back, and you should be playing him. I think the big thing here is that his return makes it tougher to play the tight ends who have really thrived, without Thielen on the field. I think if I'm going to play one of them, it will be Kyle Rudolph because he's targeted more in the red zone. But I would rather go elsewhere at tight end if I can. On the Minnesota offense, I'm playing. Oh my God, I just completely Kirk Cousins. Jesus, how did I forget his name? I'm playing Cousins. I'm playing Thielen. I'm playing Diggs, and I am playing Dalvin Cook. I think it's pretty easy against Seattle. This is a good matchup. I know they're on the road, but this is a good matchup for them. And I think you should be trying to play all of the studs here. For Seattle, the running back situation is a little bit weird. Chris Carson lost work to Rashad Penny last week after he fumbled twice, and this is not an isolated incident. He's been fumbling all year. Normally, I wouldn't care that much, but Penny looked great. 14 carries, over 100 yards. He got in the end zone. I'm still going to roll out Carson here where I need to, even though the Vikings are 4th in run DVOA. The Seahawks came out and said he's still their guy this week. We'll see how much that's just coach speak and how much it actually works. But yeah, I'm still rolling Carson. Penny to me is a wait and see in this matchup. That's not great. I'm not actively trying to play him despite how good he looked last week. But yeah, I think that's sort of the running back situation in a nutshell. And then in the pass game, Russell Wilson is an obvious play in a game that we project to be a bit of a shootout. So then I think that makes Lockett and Metcalf both easy plays here as well. They've both had sort of marginal production the past couple of weeks, but Lockett's been dealing with a shin injury, and Metcalf dropped 3 passes last week. So we'll hope for a little bit of a rebound there from both of them. I think we should expect it. The Vikings have been good against tight ends, but Jacob Hollister has 20 targets over the past 3 games. It's really hard to, fade that kind of volume. He's the preferred tight end for me in this game over Kyle Rudolph. Over Irv Smith Jr. I think you should be actively trying to play him, even though the matchup is not great. And then if you're thinking about Josh Gordon, please don't. He's only been on about 1/3 of the snaps so far in his 2 games played. We'll see if that increases as the season goes on. But yeah, I don't think it's really worth it to be getting Josh Gordon in there at this point. All right, guys, I am taking Minnesota. Let's go Minnesota to cover here and to win, actually. Why not? So I think that's going to do it for me. Hopefully you guys got some good information out of this. Again, I apologize for it coming out so late. We should be right back on schedule for Week 14. And please, guys, please hit us up with any questions that you may have going into Saturday night and Sunday morning. We will try and get them answered as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. If you are going into a potential playoff situation, best of luck this week. Win these games, get in the playoffs, win your leagues, baby. That's it. I think that should do it. So for Let's Talk Fantasy Football, I am Walsh. Later, podcast.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.